All right, we'll call the meeting of the Budget and Finance together. Would you call the roll, please?
Sure. Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Murphy, absent right now, and Ms. Naylor.
Here.
Okay, we'll go to the first item, which is a vote to recommend to the full school committee that it approve the expenditure of $153,437 from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education for FY21 Accelerated Academies Grant.
Matt and Nicole, I don't know if you want to just give the folks a quick overall overview of it. I know you've done this for some time successfully, so.
I can share a little bit more. So this year, DESE made some funding available for a specific model of what they call acceleration academies, what we've previously called empowerment academies. So we've historically run this sort of vacation week intervention, really targeted intervention in February. DESE has supported, I think, expanding this in other districts. And so they had some specific stipulations for the academies this year if we were to receive the grant funding. So one of those stipulations was holding an in-person academy. So we did not do that in February. We were able to do that in April in some schools, and they had some other stipulations around time expectations or content that we were able to meet and use in those schools where we were able to have in-person April Academy. So the funding would support stipends for teachers to do that deep intervention work, again, with a targeted group of students over those 5 days during school vacation.
And I know that that April feels like eons ago, but we were only able to make the April Vacation Academies work because of the close partnership that we had with the superintendent and with the facilities team. And of course with Jeannie Clancy. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that that week only happened because of that close partnership, and we remain very grateful. I know that is outside the terms of this grant, but I did at least want to acknowledge the fact that this happened at a pretty tenuous time because of our work together.
Thank you.
Oh, they've done a great job with those.
So it looks like Peter actually got in. How about that? So then a motion.
Sorry, guys. I was having.
No.
Oh, thanks for joining us.
No problem.
Sorry about that.
Then a motion to recommend to the full school committee that it approve the expenditure of $153,437 from Department of Elementary Secondary Education for the FY21 Accelerated Academies Grant. A motion to that effect is in order.
So move.
Thank you, Latonia. Do you want to second it, Peter, or would you rather I second it since you weren't there for?
I can second it, Chris.
Okay, thank you. Terry, would you call the roll?
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
And Ms. Naylor?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you both, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We don't talk to you. Have a great Memorial Day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
you.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Aye.
Okay, so the second item, we all know that we have had a year where we've had, or actually probably 2.5 to 3 years, where we've had an awful lot of lawsuits, and we've been watching the expenses go up, and up. And along with the lawsuits from the outside, we also were taking a look at, we pay $175,000 for the services from HR, and the lawyers we get from HR are not really lawyers who do school law all the time. They're the extra, the kind of generalist lawyers that they use. And so we looked at, I started looking around at other districts and say, what are they doing? Because we can't be the only ones with this issue. And there's a number of issues, a number of districts in the state who have gone to having inside counsel. And so you've got a lawyer there all the time for someone to go to. Of course, the important piece being that you hire somebody that knows school law. And so I asked Pat to take a look at the total financial picture. What are we spending currently on both HR and Buckley Richardson? We didn't throw in, what I didn't want Pat to throw in was the cost of all the settlements, because that's kind of an unfair assumption if you say that we wouldn't have all these settlements if we had a different council. Is an unfair statement, because some of them are, just, you can't do it. So that'd be like weighting the book, and that's not something I wanted to do. I just wanted to do have Pat do a straight up analysis. What would it cost to create a department right within our own organization, a legal services department, as compared to the way that we're doing it now? So at that point, Pat, do you want to run through what you found for expense? Everybody got that, right? The documentation.
Terry can share it on the screen.
Oh, there we go.
Thanks, Tara.
Yep. So what you're looking at is, I took a look at the Buckley Richardson contract, and that's both their base contract as well as the extra work we have them do when we need them to handle some of the labor relations cases that labor relations isn't able to handle, as well as the labor relations contract comes to a little over $698,000. And if we were to bring it in-house and we hired an attorney and a paralegal, they have some fringe benefits. We still leave some room for some specialized legal services if there's some cases or some negotiations that we need somebody specialized for. Then some general office supplies, that would total $374,000, and we would be saving $324,614 compared to what's in the budget.
So it is cutting it down to actually less than half is something we certainly had to take a look at. We've got to talk about going forward this way. What I don't have, which I was working on trying to get, would be like a job description of both both a lawyer and a paralegal. They'll probably be ready in a day or so, and we can send them out to everybody at that point. So that you can see what we'd be looking for in a lawyer and what we'd be looking for. And I think it's administrative assistant / paralegal, because it's kind of a hybrid type model. And so it's here before the committee, so we can talk it over and then bring it forward to the full committee so we can have an in-depth discussion. Certainly not this week, because this is retiree recognition. But the last meeting of the year, we can bring it forward to the school committee. So do we have questions on it?
I do have some questions. First question is, if we're insourcing, who would the attorneys report to?
The attorney, I went through MASC and I went through the attorney would be actually hired by the school committee and work with the school committee and the superintendent, similar to the way we have it set up right now. So we would create the structure where the attorney is actually employed by the school committee, but works with both the school committee and the superintendent. So it would, that's a really good key point. We want to make sure that it's still school committee's attorney. And that's the way we would have it set up. And actually, that's where we have to have it set up, according to Glenn Kuchar. He said, you really need to do it that way. And I said, okay, well, thank you, that's good advice. And that's the way we would set it up. So if our organizational chart, Latonia, when we try to think who else is there, but up at the top, you'd have the superintendent and the school committee. And this box, the box that would have legal services, would have a line going to both of us. So it shows that they answer to both of us, because they are the school committee. Whoever it is would be the school committee attorney.
So with that being the case, then would their evaluations and stuff like that go through us as well?
Good point. I didn't research that. I mean, we'd have to look at the way the evaluation do that within the contract. That's a good question. I'll have to ask Glenn how they handle that in the districts that he knows of that has it.
I can call Chicopee too, because Chicopee does this. if you want.
Yeah, yeah.
I checked in with Chicopee because I know they have this arrangement.
My gut would be that there'd be some cooperative between the school committee and the superintendent on evaluation. I don't think it would be just the one, because that's not the way the structure is set up. That's my gut, is how I believe that we'll be told it'll go.
Yeah, because I guess my thought process is that if they report to both us and the superintendent, then we would have to be involved in evaluation, and we should be involved in the hiring as well.
My gut is that what you're saying would be right. And we'd have to make sure that it's clear that that's the way that it goes. Because it makes perfect sense that if they're working for both of us, we should both have a handle
Right.
in saying how well they're performing their job. And we want to make it, we certainly don't want any of our fellow members thinking they can't go to the attorney just because they work there. They're still our attorney. Whomever it is would be our attorney. So that the school committee would have full access to them.
I do have another question, but Pete, I don't know if you wanted to jump in.
Well, I do. Thank you, Latonia. And I would just say that I agree about the evaluation piece. We certainly need to evaluate our attorneys, our counsel. And also, but I do agree with the premise that that we are a very large organization, $500 million on an annual budget, and we really should have our own counsel. And that's something that has not happened over the course of the last few decades. So I would, and if we can save money, which it looks like based upon the cost analysis, that we would actually save money, have our own counsel. And I'm assuming they would be on a contract basis, and they would also be subject to, termination. I don't, the language is, I suppose, yet to be determined. But I mean, it seems to me if we can save $300,000 and have our own counsel, that's something that we should take a very close look at.
And you're right, that, Peter, in what you said about once upon a time, there was in-house counsel in the school department. It was Brian McCook. And I don't remember when they went away from that, but once upon a time, so it's not like we're not doing what they used to do in the past. We kind of are. We're going back to what worked in the past. And maybe it was more economical. I don't know why they moved away from it when they did, but I do recall when I was a principal and teacher that you had Brian McCook downtown that you could always go to because he was a full-time employee.
So as principals, we'd have access if there was a tricky suspension or something like that. Now, every time we call, of course, you're at a private firm and you're on the clock for time, and it adds up because we're a huge organization. Chicopee, which is a lot smaller than us, went with this model a long time ago. They have a 3/5 of 60%, but I was talking to the superintendent. He said you definitely would need a full-time person, obviously, but they found it very beneficial economically because they're not with a private firm all the time. But the person they're part of the team, and they can do some proactive things relative to training to head off some of these potential litigation issues.
And Glenn mentioned Cambridge and a few others that have done this too. They have a full-time in-house counsel. Terry, do we need that chart up on there? If not, I think if we go back to the screens, we can see you guys a little better. Is it okay if Terry takes that off?
Oh, yeah, that's fine. I just have a question about the $90,000 specialized legal services. What is that?
There would always be, right now, for example, with a complicated special ed case, we have used outside counsel whose specialty is only special education. And so you got to anticipate that need could come up. And so you need to have a placeholder in there to use for that.
We would also have the issues that come up by not using the HR labor relations from the city, we'd be able to hire someone to help us negotiate and handle all those cases. That specializes again in school law, so it would be more efficient, cost saving, but also we'd have people who, they only deal with school law, so they're not researching school law, so they can take a case. So we need the money there because we thought we'd be getting rid of the $175,000 for the Labor Relations Department and have people again who only focus on school law and only focus on labor relations and the negotiations with school contracts. So that's their specialty, like a lot of other districts do.
Hampden, Wilbraham, Worcester, a bunch of them do that, and they hire an individual who's got, that's all that person does is school law. So they tend to have a better track record when they go for grievances and when they go for arbitrations, because that's all they do. So that's got some validity, that point's got some validity to it. But that's what that's for, Latonya, it'll be for those kinds of services. Because that need won't go away.
And another example would be when we had the breach in security, we had someone from the law firm who deals with only breaches in security came in because there was a lot of notification pieces we had to do when you want an attorney who specializes in that. So I think her name was Wahlberg, but they came in from Bulkley Richardson and helped us with that. So you want the ability sometimes in a particular case to go to someone who specializes. And that was very helpful in solving the breach piece for us, and very, very technical, by the way.
And the cost in that line item would tend to vary. In years where we don't have any negotiations going on, you wouldn't be using as much. In years where all of the contracts are up, you'd have a little more service. So that line item could vary, but although if this is enough to cover us during the period where we're in negotiations now, probably only vary by having a surplus.
Yeah, but we looked at Worcester's and we're confident Worcester's exactly the same size as us, and they have the same litigation challenges, and these numbers kind of bore out in Worcester, so we're very confident in the numbers.
Okay. That makes sense. I was just making sure of that I understood what that was. And
Great question. We should have explained it better.
Yeah, any line item that's that broad, you do need a definition of for sure.
We're too immersed in it and we didn't explain it properly.
Well, we're used to people being honest with the way they also run. Pat, we never worry about what he does. But in some places, yeah, when you got a line item that's that much money and you're not sure of the definition, you want to make sure what it's being used for. So that was a good question.
thank you.
And like Pete was saying, we have to develop contract language. First, we'd have to get a job description, which is almost done. And then the next thing after that would be to develop contract language. So that we'd have to review to see that, like Pete said, there can be a clause in there if there's a reason for termination, or those typical employment contracts, that it would cover all of the items in the employment contract.
Sounds good.
Okay?
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
If there are no other questions, someone needs to make a motion that we recommend this to the full school committee.
I'll make the motion.
A second it.
Terry, would you call the roll?
Sure, Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
and Ms. Naylor.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, it's not on the agenda, and I'm not gonna, it's not anything we're gonna vote on. We're in an interesting dilemma where the governor is lifting up his state of emergency on the 15th of June. Our last meeting is what, 24th?
24th.
24th. But the governor is going to do an exemption until September for public boards, where they can remain in Zoom if they choose. And the city has fully opened City Hall. So it's like, what do we do with our last meeting?
What is the city council doing? I don't think
I don't know they know yet.
Oh, okay. So that'd be.
I'm going to talk to the mayor and the city clerk and see if we can figure out.
Yeah.
Because I think we should be similar to the council probably, to see whether for that one meeting, do we go back in person, or do we, since the governor's allowing it to go through till September, do we stay remote? And I think we should stay consistent with the council unless some reason we all agree, we say, nah, but why don't we see what they're doing and find out? And we've got a few weeks to make that decision because we got 2 weeks worth of graduations to do.
It's coming together nicely. Pat Sullivan's been fantastic helping us.
Sounds good.
Excellent. So if somebody wants to make a motion to adjourn?
So move.
So moved, yeah. Second.
Go ahead, Terry, if you call the roll.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
and Miss Naylor.
Yes.